Good afternoon. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We would like to extend our thanks to Oberon Capital for sponsoring this session. Our next presenter is Russell Starr, Chairman, President, and CEO of Trillium Gold Mines. Trillium is focused on making new and expanded high-grade gold discoveries at its properties in the Red Lake District. Russell, you'll have about 15 minutes and then for a presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Please take it away.
Yeah, and look, everyone, I try to pride myself on doing this pretty quickly, so hopefully we'll have more time for questions and less time me presenting. Look, Trillium, in my opinion, is an incredibly exciting story. The gold market is rallying. Obviously, it's been a difficult environment for the last 2-3 years. But as you can see, and if you look back, the last time gold was testing 2,000, which we're getting pretty close to, the stock price was 270. And quite frankly, with only one asset in 2012, 2013, the valuation of the Newman Todd asset, that was our flagship property, was $200 million. So when you look at our share price currently and our shares outstanding, we're at a meager $30 million market cap, which is indicative of challenges in the assay lab. That's not to say we haven't had great hits. Our last hit was 20 meters of 9 grams per ton. But the assay labs have not been turning assays around. We're still waiting on assays from almost 4 months ago. Management and insiders are large shareholders. And if you look over the last 4 or 5 months, I've been a major buyer in the market at much higher prices than we currently sit at. Management owns close to 40%. And as you can see now, we've picked up some very, very meaningful what I'll call strategic investors in this last financing. My hope is that with 13 holes in the assay lab that are coming very, very quickly now, we're seeing assays hit our data center aggressively daily, as well as a robust treasury. We now have about $7.5 million in our treasury that will be able to move the needle substantially in the share price, especially with the gold price and precious metals environment improving substantially. I'll let you guys look over the technical team on your own. I will note that Bill and his team, our head of exploration, have close to 120 years of experience in the Red Lake District. This is the slide, honestly, that tells our entire story. And honestly, I'm going to focus primarily on it. Newman Todd, we have about 2 million ounces at 1.5 grams of non-43-101 compliant resources. Obviously, by the end of this year, we're hoping to have that taken to a 43-101 compliant resource. But the reality is no one's been paying us for either drill success or what we currently have anyhow, which is frustrating, as you can well imagine, especially after the fact that Dixie just sold. And the rumor is 10 million ounces at 1.5 grams, but if you extend that to us, 2 million ounces at 1.5 grams, 1/5 the value of Dixie should be where we're trading. 1/5 of Dixie obviously is substantially more than where we're trading at. And as you can see, we've added in a very meaningful and quite frankly, mid-tier, major, enviable exploration portfolio. The jewel in the crown is obviously this Confederation belt, close to 100 kilometers of strike on the same structure that Dixie sits on, with high-grade showings at surface and a lot of meaningful gold targets that we're going to be able to attack. Over the last 20 years, this has been viewed as a VMS belt, actually no different than Great Bear and Dixie. But I believe the discovery and then obviously the close to $2 billion takeover of Dixie by Kinross has turned heads and has made people realize that this belt actually should have always been viewed, as it was earlier, as a gold belt. I'm really going to take you just to this Confederation belt. We did some meaningful ground exploration and evaluation of historical data. This is only on 50% of the belt that we've acquired, but you can see the gold targets we have. As soon as spring breakup occurs, we'll get hopefully a drill rig there and start doing some serious exploration. But if all goes well, my presumption is that if we can hit any sort of meaningful gold on this belt, people will theoretically start viewing this company as potentially the next Great Bear, the next Dixie discovery. Newman Todd, as I mentioned, 2 million non-43-101 compliant ounces there. It's not even worth extrapolating on a valuation metric. We're basically trading at close to $1 to $2 per ounce of 1.5 gram per ton gold. And it's amazing. We have, in our opinion, a similar structure to what Dixie had, in that we have these really high grade shoots, and you can see the grades. 15 of 7, 20 of 9 was a step out, almost 50 to 75 meters away from that. But you can see just how open this is at depth along strike. You can see the grade is there, all of that purple, purplish, mauvish color. You can see is greater than 20 grams per ton. So this, in my opinion, represents an incredible opportunity in the Red Lake district, in the west part of the camp. And quite frankly, just from our valuation perspective, a very, very opportunistic timeline to actually pick up stock at these prices. You can see the high grade VG that we see in Rivard. You see this in our core at Newman Todd as well. Suffice it to say that, this isn't anything that's a secret. Literally, 129 over 1, 560 over 0.3. This is, staggeringly good grades and representative of that typical Red Lake style mineralization. Here is Newman Todd, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. Just so everyone knows, of the 7.5 million we have, about 50% will go into the Confederation Belt, 25 to 30 in Newman Todd, and the balance into Gold Center. But you can see that we now believe we've unlocked what exists at Newman Todd. We're going to be prioritizing these new exploration targets in D and C, and then of course you have this extension of the Newman Todd structure itself. And importantly, we picked up the Willis property of late. And if we can actually tie this entire land package together, you get massive amounts of strike on this Newman Todd structure that we already know carries a low grade horizon of gold, as well as some very, very meaningful high grades. So I've been very, very clear, Ray. It's non-43-101 compliant. Everybody needs to understand Dixie had no resource, and the majors paid $2 billion for it, or a mid-tier, if you want to call it Kinross a mid-tier. Everybody seems to be resting their hats on 43-101. The reality is, in my opinion, that's driven by analysts, and the reason being that the majority of analysts now in this space aren't even geos or have limited experience in finding relevant exploration opportunities. And so you end up with all of these folks saying, we can't put a target on your company because you don't have a 43-101. Well, somehow Kinross managed to put a target on Great Bear with no 43-101. And like I mentioned, what you're looking at in Newman Todd is a non-43-101 compliant 2 million ounces, which we believe is going to grow substantially, because as you can tell from what I showed you before, it's open at depth along strike. We barely scratched the surface, and the key difference between us and Great Bear is 1/10 the amount of drilling. So if we can just continue to add high grade, who knows where we can take Newman Todd. And our last asset, these are just historical results, but you can just see the grades. Our last asset is obviously Gold Center. We believe the continuation of the world famous Red Lake mine. They're exploring, Evolution is exploring and producing close to 300 meters away from our property boundary. We've got 5 holes coming from there, 8 holes coming from Newman Todd, and obviously we're still drilling, which is something that not many juniors can say in this market. We've been able to raise money. Our share price is actually doing quite well thanks to Red Cloud and their meetings today. I think we picked up a buyer, but I still believe even if we got to $1 or even $1.50, we represent extreme value for what we have at Newman Todd alone. With that, I'm gonna end the presentation and start taking questions, just because I think you add a lot more value with questions than you do with the presentation.
Great, thank you for the presentation, Russell. So we'll turn over to questions now. So just a reminder to everybody viewing that you can submit any questions you have using the Q&A button in the event application. Okay, so going back to 43-101, I think in the presentation you were aiming potentially for a resource by the end of the year.
Well, here's the way to think about it. If we had $100 million, you'd have a resource in a month. The reality is that we have maybe the best property package in Red Lake, and it behooves us to spend our money on that Confederation belt, especially with the strategic that we picked up, believing that there's a chance we could have 2, 3, 4, or 5 Dixies on our property package in the Confederation belt. So we'll endeavor to get to a 43-101, but I don't want to belittle Ray's comments or questions. That's not how you create value in this industry. You create value by giving things the look and feel of something massive, just the way Great Bear did. They didn't have a 43-101, and Kinross got to a point where they were very happy to spend $2 billion picking it up.
Right. Okay. So the next question here, who owns the claims between Willis and Newman Todd?
Evolution. And we have some property that we can horse trade with them, but the reality is Evolution's on record as saying they don't really care about the west side of the belt. I don't want to say not care, but that's not their focus. So with a little bit of luck, we'll be able to give them, who knows what, to get that small strip of land between Willis and Newman Todd Rivard. Right.
Okay. And then, talking a little bit about the recent financing you did, kind of what's the funding earmarked for?
50% to Confederation drilling and exploration, 25 to 30% Newman Todd, and the balance to Gold Center.
Okay, and so when you're focusing on the Confederation properties there, are you going to take that approach that you kind of alluded to with kind of, you want to try to identify one of, multiple maybe big opportunities? You're going to try looking for a lot of things, or
we've got them. I mean, I haven't even counted it, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 high probability targets on 50% of the belt.
Right. So you'll be testing kind of all of them. You're not just honing in on one or two that I'm trying to get to.
No, Bill and his team will have a thesis on which ones they should go for first. The beauty of this belt is there's tons of information, and the predominant focus was base metals, but they actually had a lot of coincident gold, but they never followed up on it. So we're going to take we'll take every piece. Like, we've been poring over the data. We'll take every piece of information we can get from everybody else's hard work and use it to hopefully make a meaningful discovery of the likes of potentially a Great Bear or another Newman Todd, or who knows.
Right. Okay. Have some questions here wondering about potential acquisitions other than what we discussed with the land between Willis and Newman Todd. Do you expect to make any more?
Absolutely.
So,
yes, we still own the Quebec assets, but we would gladly sell or JV those, and we will absolutely not do a JV with West Red Lake. We would look. We have so much leverage and potential. Why? I mean, I guess. I mean, maybe they'd want to do a JV with us, but we will never do a JV on any of our properties with them.
Great. Okay. And then,
good question, Ray. Good question.
Honing in a bit on the, I guess the strategy, if you will. It seems like you definitely kind of outlined very clearly. Make those discoveries, add value that way. Is the strategy kind of, be the dominant player here, get those discoveries,
Sell
and
the company.
yeah, like that's
Yep.
the, okay,
Yep.
perfect.
And look, I mean, people need to understand. Kinross bought Dixie for $2 billion. Nothing moved in this entire camp, which is staggering. Like Barrick JV'd all of these properties in gray. Our share price didn't move. People are like, I like being a little bit contentious, but investors are asleep at the switch here. They'd rather, pay top dollar for a tech stock in the US at premium multiples than cherry pick the bottom of the barrel junior golds that haven't moved at all with this gold price. The market is inefficient for a reason. That's how you make money. And I just, there are juniors out there with incredible land packages. Obviously we're one of them, that are seeing little to no interest until now. Thankfully today, one of our meetings, but 1 million shares traded at 50 cents on our stock. I have no idea who it was, but smart money was picking those stocks up.
Right. And is it kind of a lack of interest in general, or is it just, like obviously if people aren't putting money in, but or buying, but is it also a lack of interest, just inquisitiveness, or is it both kind of thing?
I can't answer that question. I've never ever, by any metric, the junior gold market is at all-time lows versus almost everything. And I can't, I look, I bought 400,000 or 500,000 shares from $1.30 all the way to 70 cents. I never in a million years did I think this company would have a $24 million market cap. That's a fifth of what Newman Todd was trading at in 2013.
Right. Do you have kind of any idea, I guess, what would it take, or any ideas of what it would take to get people interested again and back, not just here, but just to the.
Well, I would have thought it was 1960 gold in war with the Ukraine, but it seems like everybody's buying mid-tiers and majors because they want the liquidity in case the gold market regresses again. That would be my thesis, but you don't, like, this is deep value territory now, like deep value. You've got, you had 10 million non-43-101 compliant resources at Dixie, at a rumored gram and a half trade for $2 billion. We've got 2 million non-43-101 compliant resources with a structure that's similar, high grade shoots, 60,000 meters, 70,000 meters of drilling, trading for $20 million 2 days ago. It's trading for 35 now, but it's crazy how cheap this is.
Okay. And do you have an idea of how many meters it would take before a big player, or before you identify something where big players would look at the company?
I'll answer in a respectful but cheeky fashion, Ray. How do you know no one isn't looking at it? Right? Like I will tell you categorically that from a mid-tier and major perspective, the level of interest and intrigue in what we have far outweighs what the share price is. And it's just retail and institutional investors have just been pouring into tech I'll just say it over and over, like it's crypto, cannabis, and tech, to the detriment and exclusion of a sector that really, quite honestly, other than the oil and gas sector, has been the bread and butter of Canada. So.
Okay. And then I think this will be our last question here. We've got a few seconds left. Would you expect to sell all of the company, or just sell one project at a time?
Depends on what we're offered. Obviously, the best case scenario would be like someone coming in and taking out the Confederation belt and we spin everything else into a new structure. But if I'm a mid-tier or a major, I'm going to want to get Newman Todd with any of this because it's got real value that no one's paying for, like real value.